All right, Peter, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Of course, my name is Peter. I'm one of the two co-founders of Blue Alpha, and we're building an action system for marketing.
And what I know of Blue Alpha is it is a more rapidly sort of updating MMM with kind of prescriptive recommendations. What else is in this action system beyond MMM?
It's actually more than that, because how we think about marketing measurement is that, yes, you have an MMM as a core that gives you the statistical signal, right? And like we can talk in a minute also about how MMMs previously have been built, but we tie this actually together with incrementality testing. And on top of this, we layer anomaly detection agents that actually monitor across all of the different platforms what is happening, give you insights into creative fatigue analysis. Is your CAC dropping? Is it not CAC dropping? And then the insights that the MMM, for example, produces are then passed onto recommendation engines that give you a campaign level breakdown on what to do actually next, and also start to perform further budget diagnostic checks, for example, of like, hey, we get an insight that says, increase your marketing or increase your YouTube prospecting spend by 20,000, right? But then ultimately on the campaign level, you have 5 different campaigns that actually roll up into YouTube prospect. What an MMM is telling you is just this first piece of information. Where we actually bridge the gap is you take this insight and you break it down on the campaign level of what to do next, and then also start to perform certain checks on the platform level of like, hey, is it as easy as increasing your budget because your utilization is high enough, or do you, for example, need to adjust a bit?
That's really interesting. And so how much is like at the campaign level or ad set level or kind of however narrow you do go, how much is it sort of looking at these numbers are outside of a band of like a standard deviation of performance versus how much is it sort of like benchmarking against, like, is there any cross company benchmarking, or is it all based on historical performance, or is it based off of projected performance from like the MMM? And so you say, like, hey, we expected that YouTube would drive this. What we're actually seeing is this. And so here's what you should do.
Yes. So it's based on historic performance that then gets fed into the LLM that gives you a specific prediction, right? And the core value, which also differentiates us from like other measurement providers, is there's like an AI native or an LLM component that is actually like context aware of what your business does. And what that means is that it actually sits on top, and like has access to the individual MMM insights and all the tests that you basically run and what's happening on the campaigns, and is also aware of what your current business goals currently are. And those can actually change by company. And then it starts to give you recommendations exactly based on that.
I'm Ibi Syed.
I'm Sean Collins.
And this is Numbers and Narratives.
Peter, Can I ask a real dumbass question real fast?
Yes.
Okay, Sean knows what an MMM is, and I sort of know what an MMM is. I know the inputs, and I know the outputs to some extent. I have seen Triple Whale. I know that you log into your ad providers, and I know it tells you ROAS and CAC and all these things that marketers know, and I don't really know that well. But can you explain the issue with your competitors? Like what traditional MMMs do, where they fall short, and where
let's even start with like MMM is a media mix model, right? What is a media mix model? What is the historic of it? And then then we can get into why Blue Alpha is different.
So what is an MMM? In theory, an MMM is the problem or the solution to every marketer's problems, because it promises you that you can infuse all of your channels offline and online, and it tells you exactly what to do. So that's the promise of an MMM, right? It's like you have all of your channels, just put them into this model, and it tells you actually what is working, what is not working. So there were a couple of questions. I'll dissect it a little bit in terms of like how is an MMM different from, like, for example, what Triple Whale is doing, right? But what is the underlying foundation of a marketing mix model? It's ultimately, very simply put, it's multiple regressions, over time that try to understand the variations in spend and views or clicks and impression, for example, over time. What is the impact on your target outcome variable, which could be sales, which could be booked demos, which could be basically anything, whatever you want to measure the impact on your marketing activities on. So how is that different from triple whale? I think there's two very fundamental differences in the approach of actually measuring marketing effectiveness. And I like to split them out between the probabilistic approach and the deterministic approach. Starting with last click attribution or multi-touch, I would classify that as deterministic because it's based on someone clicking actually on an advertisement that then stores a cookie or pixel that then you can start to track over time. That's ultimately what triple whale is doing, right? Or every single last click or multi-touch attribution company out there. And marketing mix model is fundamentally probabilistic. So that means that there doesn't have to be any click or any interaction from a user in order to understand what is driving marketing effectiveness. What you lose by using an MMM is the user level granularity because it's on an aggregated level. Did I answer your question? Yeah.
And so like if you aren't a marketing measurement nerd,
yes.
Like MMMs used to be a very standard practice because in a pre-digital world, there were not clicks on things, right? And so you would do other things like, hey, call this number or mail something in or whatever, and you would try and get signal. But as we all know, people do not always scan the QR code or click the CTA. They might hear a call to action and Google something or whatever, right?
Yes.
And so in a digital world, we got very excited that everything theoretically was going to be deterministic. Everything was going to be super trackable and fine-grained at a user level. And I could map Peter clicked on these two ads, visited the site 3 times, and he bought this product versus Ibby did XYZ differently. And then now MMMs are starting to make a comeback because privacy concerns make it much harder to track at a user level. B, we have seen that the deterministic stuff and last click attribution came with its own set of other problems beyond privacy. And C, we're kind of getting back. I think that the offline or omni-channel marketing is making a bit of a comeback where people are talking about brand more and the impact of brand. And so that also adds another kind of bolstering bullet point for why you would do an MMM. Yeah.
And I would even add a D point, which is, there's this whole hype going on about AEO, GEO, LLM search, right? However you want to call it, I call it AEO. And that search is dying now, which is like the most like last click performance driven like channel, right? And our hypothesis actually on the market as well is that as more AI agents are starting to do, for example, the buying, it's more about changing the prompt instead of actually the keyword, and like changing the prompt, that means ultimately you need to go more up funnel because you need to start to capture mind share. And it's not going to be like, hey, someone is going to type in, get me the best t-shirt deal, but someone is particularly going to come in, I want to buy All Saints and find me the best deal. In order to get All Saints there, you need to actually start to build mind share and brand awareness. And that needs to go top of funnel. And as soon as you go top of funnel, no one starts clicking anymore. Because even if it is digital, when was the last time you clicked on a YouTube advertisement?
I think the last time was when I missed the skip ad button and
exactly
clicked the ad.
Yeah, it's exactly when it's in my pocket. When it's in my pocket and my pocket accidentally clicks it because there's a YouTube video playing and I'm using it as a podcast. I have a question. Okay, we're going to fight a little bit here. I always assume that AEO isn't real. And I say this fully as somebody who has customers that use our models for AEO because foundationally what the LLM is doing is it's running a search. And if you're using consumer ChatGPT or consumer Claude, it is just using a search engine to get you most up-to-date answers. So isn't AEO and SEO just the same thing? Shouldn't we be using the exact same practices?
So in theory, I would say yes, but I think you need to mimic a different search pattern, right? For AEO, they're now looking more at Wikipedia articles or YouTube videos are being scraped and read, right? So if this is matched, or PR is a big thing. And PR used to be a big thing in SEO. And now if you have PR, even if it's shitty PR, it's being picked up more by AEO. So the practice of what you need to track in order to show up is the same. I think what changes is now instead of trying to understand how Google search engine works or SEO works, and what you need to actually optimize. Now you also need to start to optimize this to mimic ChatGPTs or Perplexities or Claudes and Anthropic and so on algorithms. Yeah.
And I think the other Well, the other side, real quick on that, is that people interact with a chat GPT. We'll call all LLMs chat GPT for now, just for the ease of not listing 10 different ones. People type and ask and query things differently in that chat box than they do in a Google search bar, right? And so, we used to always talk about like long tail keywords being where the gold is, and like how can we figure out like how to rank for the most niche version of a keyword. But now it's like a full sentence or a question or a paragraph with context, and so it becomes less of a game of optimizing for a specific keyword and more of like a combination of words.
Yeah, I'm starting to do this actually now on Google, because you still have
it's weird, right?
It's weird. Yeah. It's weird. I remember when I was like back in my days, when I was still coding at Tesla, Stack Overflow was like the solution for everything, and you had to be like very specific of what is your problem in order to get like the best thread. Now everything is ChatGPT based, and obviously also sometimes in Google I just type in exactly the entire error code and be like, fix this. Yeah.
Such a bad way of doing search. I can't believe that's how I did it.
Dude, but remember before Google started getting quite so good, you used to have to, do like word plus word. You'd put things in brackets, you'd put things in quotes, like there was so much technique into a good Google search before. And then we've gotten so lazy in the last like 10 years where it's just like, wait, I put 2 words in there. I didn't get this random fact that exactly the way I wanted it, because like Google just knew everything you want now. All right, back to MMMs then. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've identified, so MMMs are probabilistic,
correct,
which means they're math. Math sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So people pay you to do math for them. Yeah.
People pay us to do math and then translate math into actions that they can actually understand. Yes. So I think that's what people pay us.
So we've talked about what an MMM is, but like, I guess where were some of the gaps in an MMM that that they needed reinvent? Like, why aren't we just building the same MMMs that they were building before?
So
it was just math.
Multiple gaps on the modeling side itself, right? So historically, these models been updated like once a quarter or once a year, right? Because there was a lot of data that you had to collect. So data availability was a problem that doesn't exist now anymore. Like you have data integration, so that's fixed. The other part was that the cadence of what you updated these different models was just too long, So I think what changed to now is having actually a weekly cadence where you feed in new data. And then what's actually happening under the hood is because a marketing mix model, which is a lot of math, also has a lot of assumptions that go into the model. And the first step is like, how do we set these assumptions? And they are customer specific. And then how do we transfer these assumptions into, when we talk about math, it's a mathematical prior. It's a prior belief that you actually can infuse into a marketing mix model, right? That you then infuse. So it's first business, insight into mathematical prior, and then prior gets infused into the model. And then it's like, how do you make sure that these beliefs that we took on, like, for example, last month or 3 months ago are still actually like valid, right? And all of this now we've basically automated. So you build customized marketing mix models that actually are tailored to a specific customer's like situation. But then there's also on top of that, the continuously part of checking or monitoring. We assume certain things like, I always believe my YouTube channel or YouTube is super incremental in ROI of 3, right? But this was at a given spend level. And now we're doubled spend. Obviously, we don't believe that the channel is incremental ROI due to like diminishing returns and so on. So now we actually need to revisit this prior, right? Usually, I think there was this huge lack in terms of like, when are we taking a certain change? Assumptions weren't changed and these models were just stale. So now they have become incredibly fast and can actually start to give you signal that you can actually act on a weekly basis, right? And then if you can start to make changes to your marketing mix on a weekly basis, we can discuss whether you should make changes daily to your marketing campaigns. I would say no, because like, there's a specific algorithm that needs to be learned, except maybe you're in the HVAC business and it's seasonality and weather dependent and you want to like, different, but like, on the usual day-to-day, I think making changes once to your marketing mix and understanding what's actually working should probably be the better operating schedule. So that's one. And then ultimately on the advancements on the MMM side, but then the second problem that we identified is that inherently they're inactionable because you cannot go down to the campaign level, because we need to have like spend, views, clicks, and impressions, for example, over time in order to actually understand what the impact is. That means we need to aggregate. That means you will never be able to go down to this specific campaign, but it's always like some kind of channel grouping based on like some naming conventions that you have. The problem that arises out of that is that if we go to the marketing team, and maybe Sean, you've seen this before, is like, and I'll bring up back to YouTube prospecting example. YouTube prospecting works great. Spend 50,000 more, right? It's like, what do you do with that insight now? Because what if you have 10 different campaigns that roll up into YouTube prospecting? What if within these different campaigns, you sometimes work with bids, sometimes you actually just like up and down budget, right? So this is the other shortcoming of an MMM, and how we fix this is that we actually pass on that insight into now a set of agents that sits on top of the platforms, that gets a signal of like, okay, user wants to actually increase, or YouTube prospecting is working, increase spend by 50,000 per week. Now actually analyze all of the campaigns that roll up into YouTube prospecting and give recommendations on how to actually like allocate the budget, right? And then also provide reasoning of what are certain checks that you've performed in order to say, okay, I believe you should spend X amount more. And then coming back to, and now tying this back to the AI piece, is we can give a recommendation, as the provider, but ultimately the person that knows best is the user, is the marketer itself. So what we've built is that you can literally design your own recommendations, enter your own budget input as well, and start to iterate with AI on it and get the campaign level breakdown to actually understand and be comfortable with why are we suggesting this and how are we actually supposed to execute it. And now the next step is that we're actually going into the execution as well. And we're launching on Google Ads that you can start to execute the recommendations within our platform on Google Ads as well. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so, as like, let's say I'm a Blue Alpha user, I have some way to put in like fixed constraints or priorities or something like that, right? Because like in a purely like mathematical world, if we're looking at incrementality, you would continue to put more money towards channels until incrementality was until it was zero, right? Or asymptoted as close to wherever you stop counting it and it rounds to zero. And so at some point, most companies can't afford to be going to like 0.0001 incrementality, right? And so like at some point there has to be a like, stop, this is where it's just not worth it anymore. And so is that something I as a user can customize and say like, no matter what, you can't spend more than $60,000 this month? Or is it more of like you take some assumptions on your own and say like, hey, we're going to round to the nearest tenth or the nearest whole or something like that?
No, that is user driven, right? And there's like either that's an input by you, or how we work with our clients during onboarding, there's a mutual success canvas where we like understand what are your objectives that you're trying to achieve. What are like certain target metrics you want to achieve? Are there certain constraints that we need to be aware of? And then these get infused into the LLM that actually sits as the guiding principle on top of it. And then as you iterate on the model, right, the beauty is you can actually be able to change it yourself. Like, hey, we only were allowed to spend 50K a month, right? But now everything is going well. Now we can actually increase budget to 100K. Like this is not something where you should come to us and say like, hey, change this this somewhere, this threshold internally. This is part of the LLM and this business context that I mentioned, that it actually starts to evolve with your usage and with your input over time. So that actually becomes your brain on top of all of the data that we basically surface for you. So it makes you a 10x. It makes you almost a data scientist, on steroids as a marketer, that now you can actually understand what is the math is mathing, what's going on.
The math is mathing.
The math is mathing, and I mean, one of the best use cases of AI is that it can actually explain and break down information so that everyone can understand it.
This is really interesting, isn't it? Because like, I feel like this is, I think this is a problem that not only like historical MMMs, like, and when I say historical MMMs, I'm literally only talking about Triple Whale and Northbeam is the other one that sort of like overlapping customers have talked about. But at least in the US, people don't freaking know how to read a graph. Like they don't know how to read a chart. Like they're like the amount of like data literacy that is in the world is surprisingly little. The reason the sort of like data that I have to back that up is dashboards. Like the number of people, like when I did BI work years and years ago, the number of people that would be like, hey, can you make me a dashboard? And then they had to have me explain what the hell was in the dashboard was surprisingly high. And one of the things that our customers ask for is the ability to just like chat with a data set. And I think it's just because they don't understand how to read a fucking graph. It's like that by itself is such a useful feature. Like it can read a graph. The only challenge is that you have to, I guess, give it some context to be able to do that. Like the recommendation part is super, super, super useful. I'm assuming that there's like some, prompting stuff that you guys have to do to be able to like give it context on like what matters. But yeah, that's cool. That's sick.
So chat with your data already exists. Hey, explain me this graph. Yes. And it's used by a lot of our users, and it goes even further. It's not just explain this graph, but you can actually load this graph into context and start to chat with the underlying data as well, right? Like for example,
I would say that to me is like where this becomes cool, right? Like it's like first of all, in defense, like I agree, data literacy is atrocious. However, the first time you are given a dashboard or a report, I do think it is the responsible thing to say, walk me through the data, the assumptions you made to define each of these metrics, because unless it's just like even something that sounds as simple as like site traffic. Are we talking about unique visitors? Are we talking about new visitors? Are we talking about repeat visitors? Are we talking about people that convert? Just getting on the same page about definitions is massively important. So like the first time, I think that should happen. If they're asking you to explain like, hey, what does this bar on the cat and whisker chart mean, right? Like that's a bit different. But then like the other piece that's always irked me, mostly because I'm pretentious, is when people say they're doing data analysis and they're like just looking at a top level graph. And it's like, well, that's not analysis. Like, let's be clear. Like a dashboard is not an analysis tool.
It's reporting.
A dashboard, exactly right. A dashboard is for me to look at and say like, rad, we are not off track or on track, or to be like directionally, what should I dig into?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I do think chat with your data is one of the coolest things that's come out, right? It's like, it saves you, the Peters and the Ibbies and the, your data analysts so much time, because without chat with your data, I am slacking my data analyst and saying like, hey, cool. What if we grouped the people this way? What if we only looked at people that bought once in Q1 and then bought again in Q3, right? And so like to be able to have that does open up so much opportunity.
Yes, 100% aligned. And that's how we've built our dashboard. There's like 3 guiding questions that we want to answer. First one is like, what happened? And then second one is like, why did it happen? And then last question is like, tell me what to do next, right? Or like, what should I do next? And those 2 questions just a continuous loop. And then the chat with your AI data just sits on top of all of that. So, and it's hooked up to our internal documentation as well. So at any given point in time, you can ask any questions like, oh, blended CAC, what does that mean? Like, is it actually blended CAC? Or like, is it blended CAC of paid media? Is it blended CAC also taking organic into account? So what does this actually mean? Right? Or like, even as simple as, okay, can you remind me what an MMM is? How is an MMM different from MTA? I need to explain this to my CMO, and like equip me with the tools that I actually can go out and advocate that this solution that we currently have is useful, instead of coming to me, or our team and be like, hey, Peter, can you quickly like write me a paragraph that helps you explain this to my CMO or my CEO of like why we're actually using this tool and why it's different than triple whale, and that's the huge unlock. And then the recommendation engine that we talked about now gets like, this is a multi-agent orchestration system, that starts to pull like different rack applications and tool calls that actually get pulled in based on the prompt. So now it gets like super deep into the math, but like chat with your data is like one of the most used features in our platform. And just because it gives the ability to also iterate live with your team on the insights that you see.
Super cool. Yeah, I love those 3 questions. That was a few jobs ago. I had a marketing analyst on my team, and we were struggling with the quality of slides that were going to be client facing. And so I mandated that every single slide was going to have OAR, observation, analysis, recommendation. And like, if it doesn't have that, it doesn't make it in the deck. Like, this is just what you have to have. And I think that's such a great reminder for people when they're looking at data of like, we're not just here to be like, oh, cool, look, this line is in a different shape than yesterday's line. Like the purpose is to figure out, like, make a guess on why, because it is a guess. We do not know for sure what happened. And then most importantly, it's really just that recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, we're German. We're German founders. So there has to be a clear process, like that. And we worked at Tesla before. So now you're like, there's like manufacturing, everything's in the, yeah.
Super cool. And so, the way I found out about y'all is from our conversation with EJ.
Mm-hmm.
He came on and talked about some being able to get a clear signal that an out-of-home campaign drove conversions, which is unique to be able to like show that mathematically. Do you have any like other like big client wins that like surprised you, or probably more surprised them, that they were like, holy cow, we never thought we'd be able to have done X without this tool?
Yes, there's a couple. One of our other customers is called Clover. Clover is a mobile app for cash advances, right? And in particular for mobile applications, I think historic MMs or historic attribution has even been hit harder due to like privacy regulations, and they're almost flying completely blind, in particular on the iOS side. And when they started working with us, they were heavily over-indexed on one particular channel, which was Meta. And this was almost driving like 80% of their entire marketing mix. And it was correlated with impact, with like sales outcomes, but the spend impact ratio was extremely inefficient. Okay. And when we're talking extremely inefficient, we're talking like 50% overspending. And what we ultimately showed them was like, hey guys, I think we can reduce budget by 50% and you won't see a drop in your target KPI, right? And in the beginning it was like, guys, are you sure? Like 50% is a big drop. Like this could mean like our entire business goes down type of thing. So then we say, okay, of course we're not going to reduce everything by 50. Let's do a stepwise function of like, let's reduce budget by 10%. If we don't see any change, let's start reducing it by 20, 30 and so on, right? We started doing it. Nothing happened. We started to build trust that what our MMMs and the incrementality tests that we're actually running were truly working and that the signal was right, And now over time of working with them for 6 months, their marketing mix now ranges across CTV, which is one of their like most incremental channels, still doing a lot of Meta, but also starting to dip toes into like TikTok, Google search and other channels. And they have a very healthy marketing mix that in case something happens to one of the channels and some of the big players start to change their marketing, their algorithms now, and stuff doesn't work anymore, they're actually in a good spot, So ultimately we saved them within the first 4 weeks, like multiple millions, So that was a big win. And another big win goes more into the e-commerce side of things. I think in particular in e-commerce, which is also very still legacy triple whale performance driven, right? That
and generally very heavily weighted towards Meta.
And very heavily towards Meta. There's this big belief now with like brand coming up, brand doesn't work and like top of funnel doesn't work. And we actually launched a YouTube campaign and we ran an incrementality test, like a geolift test for YouTube. And we got an ROI of 3, an incremental ROI of 3, and literally made them almost 200 grand.
Good night. Yeah, that's
awesome.
Your point about Clover and the correlation is a good one, right? Like if you are over indexed towards a channel, like, yeah, it's going to be correlated to conversions. And like, that's just the way that it works. But that doesn't mean that it's efficient or that you need to stay there to that scale. That's really interesting. Exactly.
If you 5x you spend, but you only 1x your sales metric, they are correlated, but it's not efficient. So
yeah. And you are in an interesting place where you get to see, like, we get to talk to a lot of brands and be like, what are you doing? We get to hear kind of the story and the just word of mouth on what's working and what they're thinking about. But you get to see numbers for a lot of companies and get to see, truly understand what's trending up, what's trending down, what's gaining steam, what's not. You're at a very interesting place in the marketing world. What are some of the kind of like high level, we don't need numbers and stuff like that. We don't need you to say names, but like, what are some of the trends you're starting to see across channels, across like, as people are getting healthier marketing mixes?
Well, first, cut your search, because everyone's over-indexed on search. And then
there we go.
Especially branded search as well. I think that's a big one where we start to usually cut spend and free up budget. And then Meta and TikTok are still incremental, given at certain spend levels. And placing big bets on out of home also works, but it needs to be an actual big bet. For example, like out of home, I think there's a specific playbook to it. If no one knows you, you got to go very big. You can't just like half-ass it, you got to go very big. If you already have awareness, I think out of home can be almost like a accelerator of this initial awareness, because now people are starting to see you also in real life, besides, for example, the digital presence that you have worked. So what we're really starting to see is that top of funnel is working, and more the bottom of funnel channels like hardcore search, are usually heavily over-indexed. Yeah.
Very cool. Peter, this was super interesting.
So good. So I learned so many things.
This was great. I love when Ibby's in like absorb mode, and I get to nerd out on marketing stuff. If people want to learn more about you, about Blue Alpha, want to work with you, want to find out how to save themselves millions or make millions more, what is the right way that they can do all that?
They can come to our website, bluealpha.ai, and book a lovely demo with me.
Perfect.
It's awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.